Hello everyone, and this e-content describes a complete analysis of the poem Kubla Khan written by S.T. Coleridge. Author's note: Samuel Taylor Coleridge was born in the year of 1772 and died in the year of 1834, was one of the great English poet, critic and philosopher of Romantic age. He is best known for his poems Kubla Khan, The Rime of the Asian Mariner and Christabel. Early life and education. Born on 21st October in the year of 1772, the place of Ottery, St. Mary's, Devonshire, England. His father was one of the schoolmaster and clergyman, which gave Coleridge early exposure to classical learning. He was highly imaginative, sensitive child and fond of reading and daydreaming. Educated at Christ Hospital School, London, where he met Charles Lamb, and later he studied at Jesus College, Cambridge, but left without completing his degree due to financial and personal difficulties. Literary career and friendship with Wordsworth, Coleridge became a central figure of English Romanticism, emphasizing imagination, emotion, nature, and the supernatural. His most important literary partnership was with William Wordsworth. Together they published Lyrical Ballad in the year of 1798, which marked the beginning of the Romantic movement in English poetry. Coleridge contributed poems dealing with supernatural and imagination, for example, The Rime of the Asian Mariner. Wordsworth focused on nature and common life. Kubla Khan and opium influences. Kubla Khan was written in the year of 1797 after Coleridge experienced opium dream. He claimed the poem came to him fully formed in a vision but was interrupted while writing it, leaving the poem a fragment. Opium addiction seriously affected his health, productivity, and personal life. Philosophical and critical works. Coleridge was not only a poet but also a great literary critic and philosopher. Important prose works. Biography Literaria was published in the year of 1817, a major works of literary criticism and philosophy. Introduced an ideas of imagination, especially such as primary imagination and then secondary imagination and fantasy imagination. The author was deeply influenced by German philosophy, especially Kant and Schelling. Later life and death, Coleridge suffered from poor health, addiction, and depression in later life. He spent his final years under medical care at Highgate, London, where he continued writing and lecturing. He died on 25th July in the year of 1834 at the age of 61 years. Literary importance: he is considered to be a pioneer of Romantic poetry and is a master of supernatural imagery, symbolism, and music language. He is also one of the greatest literary critics in English literature, as his poems explores the silent features of dream and vision, nature and imagination, mystery and supernatural, and psychological depth. Let us see the historical background of the poem. Kubla Khan was written around the year of 1797 during the Romantic age, late 18th century. The Romantic period arose as a reaction against the Industrial Revolution and the Age of Reason, such as neoclassicism. Writers like Coleridge rejected strict logic and order and emphasized imagination, emotion, dream and visions, nature and the mysteries. The poem was inspired by Coleridge's reading of Samuel Purchas's travel book, which describes Kubla Khan, the Mongol emperor and the founder of the Yan dynasty in China. Coleridge claimed the poem came to him in the opium-induced dream, reflected the dramatic fantasization with alerted states of consciousness. Let us see the political background of the poem. The poem was written during the time of the great political upheaval, such as the French Revolution that has shaken Europe in the year of 1789. Early, early, the people, everyone hopes that liberty, equality, and fraternity turned into violence and war. Coleridge, like many Romantic poets, was initially inspired by revolutionary ideals, but later became disillusioned. In this poem, Kubla Khan is a powerful ruler, represents absolute authority and imperial power. The line ancestral voice professing war reflects the fear of political instability and conflict. The contrast between ordered pleasure's doom and the violent and chaotic charms symbolizes the tension between the political control and the natural forces, the fragile nature of the human power, and thus the poem subtly reflects the anxieties about despotism, empire, and the political unrest. Let us see the social background of the poem. British society at the time was undergoing a rapid industrial and social changes such as urbanization, mechanization, and decline of rural life. Dramatic feared that industrial society was destroying human imagination, alienating humans from nature. Kubla Khan represents an idealized and exotic world far removed from industrial England. The poem celebrates creative imagination, artistic freedom, mystery, and beauty. The Abyssinian maid represents a pure artistic inspiration contrasting with the materialism of contemporary society. So let us focus on the literary and cultural background of the poem. Orientalism. The poem reflects Orientalism, a romantic fantasization in the East. Eastern landscape, Zandu, Elf River, Abyssinia are portrayed as exotic, mysterious, and dreamlike. This allowed dramatic poets to escape Western rationalism and explore imagination and fantasy. And let us concentrate on psychological background of the poem, such as the poet Coleridge struggles with an opium addiction, illness, and anxiety influence the poem's dreamlike quality. The entire thing reflects the mind and psychology of the poet. And the poem reflects the romantic belief that poetry originates in the subconscious mind. Fragmentary structure mirrors the unstable mental and emotional state of the poet. Let me describe about structure, form, and tone of the poem. The structure of the poem, Kubla Khan has a loose, irregular fragment structures which reflects the origin as a dream vision. The poem could be divided into three main movements. The first movement, such as from line 1 to 11, describes as Kubla Khan's ordered pleasure doom of Zandu. Then imagery of control, harmony, and architectural beauty could be reflected in this movement. And the nature is tamed and enclosed by human power has also been described in this lines. Then second movement, it is from line number 12 to 36. This lines focuses on the wild, chaotic charms and violent foundation, and it also describes nature's appears savage, uncontrollable, and mysterious manner. And it also introduces tension, danger, and supernatural energy. And this line ends with ancestral voices professing war. The third movement of this poem starts from line number 37 to 54. It shifts the poet himself and the Abyssinian maid, concerns artistic inspiration and imagination. The poet images creating the doom through poetic power. This structure shifts moves from outer landscape to inner imagination. And when we see the form of the poem, it is fragmentary form. Coleridge subtitles the poem as a fragment. The poem lacks a traditional beginning, middle, and the end. It also reflects the interrupted dream vision in which it was composed, and verse form is written in irregular and rhymed lines. No fixed stanza pattern has been followed in this poem. The lines are combined differently with a rhythmic movement, such as flowing lines from rivers and beauty, harsh and broken rhythm of chaos and violence. And the meter is simply primarily iambic tetrameter but frequently varies. Irregular meter enhances a dreamlike and musical quality. And the rhyming scheme is no single consistent rhyming scheme and uses interlocking and shifting rhyming such as decrease, see, ran, and man. And it contributes to the poem musical and hypnotic effect. And the tone of the poem is it changes throughout the poem, reflecting different emotional state of the poet mind. Let us see this tone in the three different categories. The tone in the first section, it focuses on majestic and the grand manner. It reflects imperial power and artistic magnificence. a sense of awe and admiration. And the tone in the second section it describes about dark and mysterious and ominous, suggests danger, violence, and supernatural forces, creates attention and fear. And the third one is the tone is final section is elastic, visionary, and inspired, and mixed up with longing and frustration, ends with awe and holy dread. Let us see the characters and important places are found in the poem. Zandu, this is a grand palace and pleasure dome of Kubla Khan built by Mongol emperor. It describes his stately pleasure dome is a beautiful, exotic and almost mystical location. It symbolizes human creativity, imagination and the power of art. The sacred river Alf, the river that runs through the landscape surrounding Zandu. It flows through the caravans and sunny pleasure sound and eventually reaching a tumulus charms represents the nature forces of creation and destruction. Caravans measureless to man. These are mysterious vast underground space through which the river Alf flows. It symbolizes the unknown subconscious and mysterious depth of human mankind of and his mind. Then sunny pleasure dome with gardens brined. This is a beautiful garden and fertile land around Zandu, and it symbolizes the harmony between nature and the human imagination. The next is tumulus charms, such as where the river Alf ends its courses in a dramatic and chaotic way. It suggests the uncontrollable and sublime power of nature. Characters in Kubla Khan. The first character is Kubla Khan, the main figure of the poem. It is who's a Mongol emperor who builds a magnificent palace in Zandu. Represents human power, ambition, and creative imagination. The next is the speaker is poet. Though not directly in the narrative of Zandu, the poet Coleridge appears in the framing of the poem as a visionary observer. The poem describes what he dreams and imagines, blurring reality and vision. It represents artistic inspiration and creative mind of the poet. The next character is a damsel with Dulcimer. It is a mysterious figure who appears in the poet's vision. She sings on Mount of Abora, inspiring the poet with vision of the poetic creation. It symbolizes artistic view and the sources of imaginative inspirations. Zandu and the river Alf, it represents the imaginative and exotic landscape, and Kubla Khan, it represents the power and the human creativity. Damsel with Dulcimer, it represents inspiration for the poetry, and the poet who is an observer and dreamer, linking imagination and creation. Let us see the summary of the poem. The summary is a dreamlike meditation of a human creativity and imagination using exotic setting of Kubla Khan, Zandu and the mysterious river Alf to explore the relationship between the nature, art and inspiration. And the poem is a lyrical description of the palace and landscape created by Mongol Emperor Kubla Khan and blending reality, imagination, and the supernatural. Coleridge wrote this poem. It is after the opium influenced dream, and the poem reflects the vision and the power of creativity of the poet. Part 1 is it describes about the palace and the landscape. The poem begins with the description of Zandu, the luxurious palace built by Kubla Khan. Kubla Khan orders a stately pleasure dome to be built in a mid of beautiful and exotic landscape, and the river Alf that flows through the lands and meandering through the fertile lands and then plunging into the caravan measureless to man, eventually forming the sacred and Talmus charms. This part highlights about both the beauty of the human creation and the power of the nature, showing harmony and contrast between the two. The part 2 describes about poetic vision. The second part shifts more personal imaginative tone. The poem dreams of a damsel with a dulcimer who sings of Mount Abora, inspiring him to recreate her song in poetry. The speak expresses a desire to build a vision like Kubla Khan's tomb in his own imagination. The poem ends with reflection of the power of poetic imagination. If the poem could fully harness its creative vision, he could recreate the pleasure dome and the divine beauty of the world in the art. Let us see the key themes of the poem: imagination and creativity. As Kubla Khan construction of Zandu symbolizes human imagination, and the poet seeks a capture of in his own art. Then next is nature versus human power. The river and the charm represents uncontrollable forces of nature, contrasting with Kubla Khan's ordered pleasure dome. Next is sublime and the supernatural. The poem emphasizes awe-inspiring landscape, dream and mystical visions. Ephemeral nature of artistic inspiration. Coleridge suggests that inspiration is fleeting like his own interpreted dream. Let us see line by line explanation with literary devices. Line 1: Zandu did Kubla Khan. The poem begins by placing the reader in Zandu, the capital of the Mongol Emperor Kubla Khan. The tone is dreamlike, majestic. Coleridge immediately transports us to an exotic and distant land. Literary device used in this line is allusion, references to the historical ruler Kublai Khan. Then exotic imagery is used in this line, such as this literary device creates a mystical eastern atmosphere. So line number 2, a stately pleasure, doom decrease. So it is a summer palace, that earthly paradise built by human will against the wild nature, and the decrease is authoritative order for an opulent theme of recreation and of an imagination and contrast between man-made beauty and natural chaos. To explain that Kubla Khan ordered the construction of a grand palace which is meant only purely for pleasure and enjoyment and symbolizing luxury and royal authority. Literary device used in this line is imagery, such as stately pleasure dome suggests a grandeur, and symbolism it suggests a dome symbolizes human artistic creation and power. Line number 3, where Alps, the sacred river, ran. And this line, okay, it describes the river named Alp flows through the land, calling it sacred and suggests its spiritual importance. The river is an imagery and adds to the dreamlike quality. Literary device used in this line is symbolism. The river represents a creative imagination. Alliterations could find in the words like a river and ran, and r sound is repeated again and again, so it is an alliteration. Line number 4, through caravans measureless to man. Caravans here it represents a large cave or a hole inside the cave or a chamber. The river flows through the enormous caves that humans cannot measure, emphasizing mystery and the limits of human knowledge. Literary device used in this line is hyperbole, measureless exaggerate depth, and symbolism is caravan. It represents unconscious mind of the poet. Line number 5, down to the sunless sea. The river is finally disappears into dark, lifeless sea. This suggests mystery and death and the unknown. Literary device uses the imagery such as darkness and the depth. And another literary device is symbolism, that end of the conscious imagination of the poet. Line number 6, so twice 5 miles to the fertile ground. We can see the pleasure dome is surrounded by 10 miles of rich productive land, showing an abundance and prosperity. Literary device used as visual imagery. And another devices, precisions such as numerical details adds realism of the verses. Then line number 7, with walls and towers were glittered around. Here glittered means it's surrounded by band. So the entire land is closed by strong walls and towers, showing a human control over and protection. Literary device used in this line is symbolism and imagery, such as human efforts to dominate nature. Line number 8, and there were gardens bright with Sinus rills. Sinus rills means curving stream or channels, often with the snail-like and meandering paths. The gardens are beautiful and filled with winding streams and creating a peaceful and artistic setting. Literary device used in this line is imagery such as visual beauty. Alliteration is found in the two phrases of such as sinus and stream is sound is repeated. Line number 9, where bloomed many an incense-bearing trees. Incense-bearing tree is a Comfifera tree known as aromatic gums resins used for fragrant incense in religious ceremonies. The trees with fragrant flowers blooms there, pleasing the sense of smell. Literary device used in this line is olfactory imagery such as smell. The sensory imagery is also another literary device used in this lines. Line number 10, and here were the forests Asian as the hills. The forests are extremely old and Asian has a hill, suggesting timelessness. Literary device used in this line is simile, as Asian has a hill. So the Asian is the forest is compared to as a hill, so it is simile used in this line. And hyperbole, so it is exaggerated as a hill as compared to the tough one old forest. Line number 11, enfolding sunny spots of a greenery. Enfolding means it's wrapped complete vegetation such as garden and natural surrounding with a non-green environment. So the Asian forest surrounded with bright green open spaces, creating harmony between light and shades. So literary device is used in this line is contrast, such as light shade and dark shade, soften vegetation, and imagery is also used in this line. The imagery is greenery, so it represents a non-green environment. Line number 12, but ho! That deep romantic charms and which slanted charms and a mysterious and beautiful George symbolizing the depth and imagination and creativity of place, both enchanting and wild slanted meaning sloped landscape. The poet suddenly draws an attention to a deep, wild George. Exclamation shows emotional intensity. Literary device used in this line is exclamation, sudden emotional outburst, and imagery is used in this line. Line number 13, down the green hill, athwart a cedar covers, athwart meaning from side to side, cedar thick dense growth of cedar trees and woods are grown. This charm cuts across a green hill covered with cedar trees, showing nature's wildness. Literary device used in this line is visual imagery. Alliteration could found in this phrases such as cedar and cover. That is, cur sound is repeated in this two phrases. So it is alliteration. Line number 14, a savage place, a holy and enchanted. Savage place means location is wild and untamed and spiritual delight. The place is wild and dangerous, yet sacred and magical at the same time. We can see exclamation in this such as phrases, a savage place. The place seems to savage, but at the same time very wild and dangerous and sacred and magical place. And literary device used in this line is paradox, such as savage yet holy. So two contradictory term of savage, but at the same time very holy, spiritual and magical place. Line number 15. As Sir beneath a waning moon was haunted. The line illuminates a part of a moon is decreasing after lunar eclipse. The place seems haunted under the fading moon, creating supernatural mood. Literary device used in this line is Gothic imagery, and imagery is supernatural. Line number 16, by the woman wailing for the demon lover. In this line, we can see woman wasn't wailing for her demon lover under the shrink moon, suggesting supernatural beauty with mystery. And the poet compares the place of the woman crying for her supernatural lover, adding mystery and fear. Literary device used in this line is simile and mythical imagery. Line number 17, and from this charms, this ceaseless turmoil seething. This line describes the violent and restless activity coming out of the deep charms, a steep narrow in the earth. The charms is not a calm and powerful instant, it is filled with constant agitation and chaos. The phrase ceaseless turmoil suggests never ending disturbance, while seething conveys the image of something boiling, foaming, or violently moving like stormy sea or erupted lava. Together, these words create a powerful picture of uncontrolled nature energy as a line conscious of mind of the earth. Literary significance, the charm symbolizes the dark, mysterious, and destructive force of nature. It contrasts sharply with an ordered, beautiful pleasure dome of Kubla Khan, highlighting the tension between human art and wild nature. The line also reflects Coleridge's romantic ideas that nature is powerful, unpredictable, and awe-inspiring beyond human control. Let us see the literary device found in this line. It is alliteration, the ceaseless seething. Imagery is personification. The charms is given lifelike qualities by being described as an seething. Imagery is also one of the literary devices used in this line. Vivid visual kinetic imagery helps the readers imagine violent motion. And alliterations such as ceaseless and seething adds musical effect and intensity to this line. The line means that deep crack in the earth is violently and continuously boiling with chaotic movement, showing the frightening power of nature. Line number 18, as if this earth is fast, thick pants were breathing. This line Coleridge describes earth as it is were alive and breathing heavily. The phrase fast thick pants suggests a rapid, labored breathing like that of the person after intense exertion. This creates the impression that the earth itself is a struggle, restless, and violently active. The poet is comparing the violent movement of nature, such as the eruption charms and surging waters, to the physical breath of a lying being. And this makes the scenes vivid and dramatic, emphasizing the immense energy and agitation within nature. Let us see the literary significance of this line. Line shows nature as living, powerful force, not a passive background. It reflects a romantic relief that the nature possesses life, spirit, and emotion. It intensifies the contrast between human order, Kubla Khan pleasure, doom, and wild and uncontrollable nature. Let us see the letter device used in this line, such as simile is used in this line, as if compared the earth movement to the human breathing, and personification is also used in this line, such as the earth is given human qualities as panting. Imagery is also used in this line. The strong physical imagery makes a sense of intense and alive. Alliteration such as fast, thick adds rhythmic force to the line. Line means that earth appears to be alive, breathing heavily due to violent and restless nature activity. The earth is compared to the living being breathing heavily. Line number 19, a mighty fountain momently was forced. This line describes a powerful foundation of water that is being violently pushed upward from the earth. The word mighty emphasizes the great strength and the force of the foundation, while momently suggests that the eruption happened suddenly and repeatedly, moment after moment. The word force indicates that the water does not rise gently, instead, it is driven upward by increased pressure from beneath the ground. This gives the image of natural eruption like a geyser or a volcanic spring. Literary significance used in this line is the line shows the nature explosive and uncontrollable energy. It continues the image of the chasms as the source of violent natural power. It contrasts with the calm, measured beauty of Kubla Khan's pleasure dome, reinforcing the theme of human art versus wild nature. Literary device used in this line is imagery, a strong visual imagery of erupting water, personification, such as suggestive nature appears to act with an intention and force. Alliteration such as mighty and momently, mer sound is repeated in this both the phrases, that is mightily mer sound. It begins with mer, and momently also this phrase it begins with mer sound, so it adds more rhythmic intensity. Alliteration is found in this both of the phrases. This line means that powerful foundation suddenly burst from the earth with a great force, and symbolism such as in creative forces used in this line. Line number 20, a mid-whose shift, half intermediate burst. Half intermediate, something that starts and stops but not continuously bursts fully. Line continues the description of the powerful fountain mentioned earlier. The poet says that fountain eruptions of his shift very fast and half intermediated, meaning that it does not flow continuously but bursts out in a quick and repeated intervals. The word admit suggests that all the surrounding natural activity, rocks, water, and charms, it is caught within the rapid and explosive movement. The line creates a vivid picture of sudden violent urges of water, followed by brief pauses like pumping of living forces beneath and water. Literary significance used in this line is it emphasizes the restlessness, unpredictable energy of nature, the interrupted burst against instability and tension, reinforcing the wildness of the scene. It continues the romantic ideas of nature as dynamic and uncontrollable. So the fountain erupts is sudden and powerful burst. Literary device used in this line is kinetic imagery is used in this line. Alliteration is also used in this line, such as an imagery is also another device used in this line. So strong visual and kinetic imagery of the bursting water. And alliteration such as swift and half adds musical movement. And one more literary device is used in this line is enjambment. So the sentence continues with the next line, mirroring the ongoing motion. So it is an enjambment of literary device used in this line. This line means that the foundation erupts rapidly in a short, interrupted burst of powerful energy. Line number 21, huge fragments vaulted like a rebounding hail, vaulted and domed like hailstone bounces. In this line, Coleridge describes a large piece of rocks and death being thrown violently into air by a powerful eruption of a foundation. The word huge fragments emphasizes the size and weight of these pieces, showing that immense force of natural explosions. The verb vaulted suggests that the fragments are hurled high upward almost as they are jumping and leaping into the air. The simile like rebounding half compasses the flying fragments to the hailstones that strikes the ground and bounces half back, highlighting the speed and violent and repeated motion of an debris. Literary significance, such as the line powerfully conveys the nature's destruction, uncontrollable energy. It adds an atmosphere to the chaos and turbulence surrounding the charms. The violent imagery contrasts with the calm artistic beauty of the Kubla Khan pleasure dome. Literary device used in this line is simile, like rebounding hail, compares rock fragments to hailstones. Imagery such as strong visual and kinetic imagery. Alliteration such as huge hail adds emphasis and rhythm. Line means a large piece of rock or hurled into the air and bounces violently like falling hailstones. Simile such as visual imagery is also used in this line. Line number 22, or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail. Shafi grain, a grain kennel that are poorly developed. Fellel is an agriculture tool used for threshing. In this line, Coleridge compares flying piece of rock and earth to a grain mixed with husk. Chaff being beaten during the process of threshing. Thresher's flail is a wooden tool used to strike harvested grain so that the grain separated from the husk. Just as a grain is violently struck, broken, and scattered under the flail, the fragment of the rock are forcefully beaten and thrown about the powerful eruptions of the charms. The comparison highlighting the intensity and violence and repeated bowl and of the nature force of work. Literary significance. The nature is shown as an immensely powerful and destructive. The image suggests rhythmic and restlessness, motion like a separated strike of the flail. It strengthens the contrast between wild nature and human-made orders in the poem. So to conclude, the rocks are compared to the grain flying during threshing. Literary device used in this line is simile. Rock fragments are compared to the chaffy grain under the flail. And imagery is rural imagery is used in this line, such as strong rural and kinetic imagery is used. The line means that the rocks are violently struck and scattered like of a grain beaten by farmers, fellel during threshing. In this line, Coleridge continues the description of violent eruption from the charms. The flying fragments are compared to the chaffy grain mixed with husk being struck during threshing. A farming process is which a grain is beaten with the flail to separate the edible grain from the husk. The comparison suggests that the rocks and earth are beaten and shattered and scattered violently, just as a grain is struck and tossed about under the threshing flail. This image emphasizes the force, speed, and repeated blows of natural eruption. Literary device used in this line is the simile shows the nature acting like a powerful worker, forcing, breaking, and scattering matter. It reinforces the idea of destructive yet productive energy. Since rushing through the violent, it is necessary process. Then we can see the literary device. It still follows. That is, imagery is used as vivid rural imagery drawn from agricultural life. Alliteration is also one of the literary devices used in this line. Is threshers and flail adds rhythmic emphasis. Hence, this line means that the rock fragments are violently beaten and scattered like grain struck by farmers' flail during threshing. Line number 23. And midst these dancing rocks at once and ever. To explain this line in sense, the rock appears to dance continuously in the violent motion. Literary devices used in this line is personification and imagery. Line number 25. It flings up momentarily the sacred river. To explain this line in sense, the sacred river is repeatedly thrown up from the chaos. Literary device used in this line is birth of creativity, and it is a symbolism and imagery is used in this line. Line number 25. 5 miles mentoring with mazy motion. Mentoring, in the sense, it is taking a winding and indirect path. Mazy means thrilling sensation. And we can see the meaning of this line is the river flows in a winding and confusing path. Literary device used in this line is mazy motion imagery. Line number 26. Through woods and dale the sacred river ran. Dale, a valley, especially open river in the hill area. The river passes peacefully through the forest and valley. Literary device used in this line is pastel imagery. Line number 27. Then reached the caravan measureless to man. To explain this line is the river again enters the deep and immeasurable caves. Literary device used in this line is repetition, reinforced image, mystery is used in this line, and symbolism is also is used in this line. Line number 28, and sank into tumults to the lifeless ocean. Sank into tumult. It is intense noise or confusion. The river enters violently into the deep sea, symbolizing loss. Literary device used in this line is symbolism, such as end of imagination. Line number 27, and amid this tumult, Kubla heard from far. In this line, Coleridge says, amid also this noise, chaos, and violent movement of nature, the tumult causes by erupting fountain, flying rocks, and roaring waters, Kubla Khan hears something from the distance. The word midst, places of Kubla Khan surrounded by disorder while heard from far, suggesting a distance, echoing sound, adding a sense of mystery and foreboding. This moment introduces shift from physical action to prophetic awareness. Literary significance used in this line is, the line marks a transition from wild natural imagery to prophecy and a supernatural warning. It suggests that even a powerful ruler like Kubla Khan is not beyond the influence of nature or on fate. Distant sounds creates an atmosphere of mystery, suspense, and awe. So hence, amidst the chaos, Kubla Khan heard distant voices. Literary device used in this line is auditory imagery. Auditory imagery is a distant sounds that Kubla Khan hears a lot of mist sounds. Enchantment, the sense continues into the next line, and the contrast used in this line is human power of Kubla Khan sets against overwhelming natural chaos. So this line means that the amidst of violent natural chaos, Kubla Khan hears a distant sound. Line number 30, ancestral voice professing war. To explain this line is, the voice of ancestor predicted future war and creation of tension. Literary device used in the line is foreshadowing about the war, and supernatural imagery is used in this line. Line number 31, the shadow of the dome of pleasure. This line refers the reflection, the shadow of Kubla Khan's pleasure dome falling upon the surrounding nature landscape, especially the river below. The dome of pleasure, it symbolizes human art, power, and luxury created by Kubla Khan. The word shadow suggests that dome images is not solid and permanent, but it is a fleeting reflection, highlighting the temporary nature of human achievement. It also creates a dreamlike, mysterious atmosphere as a man made structure appears to float or simmer over nature. Literary significance used in this line is, the line highlights the interaction between human creation and nature. It suggests that human grandeur is beautiful but transient. The shadow blends with natural element, reinforcing the poem's dream vision quality. Hence, we can see the reflection of the pleasure dome appears on the water. Literary device used in the line is symbolism. Dome of pleasure, it represents a human power, art, and luxury. And shadow represents, it symbolizes illusion, transition, and permanence. An imagery used in this line is visual imagery of reflection and light. We can see the reflection of pleasure dome that appears on that water. The line means that the reflected image of Kubla Khan magnificence pleasure dome appears on the surrounding landscape. Line number 32, floated midway of the wave, the shadow seems to float gently, the middle on the wave, creating a dreamlike effect. Literary device used in this line is personification. Line number 33, where was heard the mingled measure. The mingled is amalgamated combination of sound. Two or more different sounds are heard together. Literary device used in this line is auditory imagery. Line number 34, from the fountain and the caves. Sounds heard from the fountain and caves mixed harmoniously. Literary device is used in this line as adamatophoia. It implies which the sound imitates or suggests the natural sound made by an object or animal or an action. Line number 35, it was a miracle of a rare device. Here, okay, the miracle, it refers to something wonderful and astonishing beyond a normal achievement. Hence, the palace is built in an astonishing manner and wonderful manner beyond a normal human achievement. Rare device here refers to exceptional skill and artistic genius and imagination creation. So the palace is built in exception and an artistic genius manner. And the entire scene is described as a miraculous creation. Literary device used in this line is hyperbole, and the palace is built in an artistic genius and fantastic imagination creation. Line number 36, a sunny pleasure dome with a cave of ice. Sunny pleasure dome here refers to it's a bright and beautiful palace built for enjoyment and luxury and delight. The poet says that the leisure dome is not an ordinary building, but it is a marvelous creation produced by extraordinary art and imagination. The word sunny suggests joy, warmth, and splendor, while pleasure dome conveys luxury, sensuous light, and royal power in a delightful manner. The striking contrast of warm and cold exist together. Literary device used in this line is paradox and contrast. Hence, this line presents one of the most striking images of imaginative contrast in the poem. Sunny pleasure dome. In this phrase, we can see sunny represents brightness, warmth, and joy of life of human life, and pleasure of doom refers to magnificent palace built for luxury, delight, and joyful enjoyment of human life. Together, the phrase conveys a splendor and beautiful and sensual happiness. And with caves of ice, this refers to the cave suggests darkness, depth, and mystery and hidden force of nature. Ice symbolizes coldness, rigidity, and stillness, the qualities opposite to sunshine and pleasure. Hence, the author Coleridge describes an impossible yet beautiful structure where extreme opposites exist together. Warm and cold, light and darkness, then pleasure and mystery. Such a structure cannot exist in the real world, it can exist only in the poet's imagination. This shows the miraculous power of poetic creativity. Yet this line highlights the romantic imagination which can unite contradictory harmoniously. It reflects poem dreamlike and supernatural quality. The contrast suggests the balance between human art, the dome, and the nature mysteries power, the caves of ice. Literary device used in this line is paradox and contrast, such as sunny and ice placed together. It is a two contrasts, and it is a paradox also in same sense. Imagery is also one of the literary device used in this line, such as vivid visual and sensory pictures is reflected in this line. And symbolism is also we can find one of the literary device found in this line, such as warm, uh, which could be compared to joy and creativity, and at the same time, ice is compared to mystery and unknown. So it is a paradox in term also. Line number 37, a damsel with a dulcimer. This line introduces a visionary figure seen by the poet in a dreamlike state and plays a crucial role in expressing the theme of poetic inspiration. Damsel refers to young woman or a maiden suggests innocence, beauty, and grace. Dulcimer represents a music instrument that produces soft, sweet, and melodious sound. Together, the phrase creates an image of beautiful young women playing gentle, enchanting music. To fix the context of this line, the poet says that he once saw this damsel in a vision. She is described as an Abyssinian maid who sings the song of uh, the Mount Abra while playing her dulcimer. This vision represents the source of creative inspiration that the poet longs to recover. Symbolic meaning is damsel symbolizes pure imagination or a poetic inspiration. Dulcimer's music represents the rhythmic and musical power of poetry. A song has the power of recreate the pleasure doom like poet's mind. The poet introduced A singing young woman playing a musical instrument. Literary device used in this line is imagery. Line number 38. In a vision once I saw. The poet clarifies this is a dream or a vision. Line marks a clear shift in the poem from the description of Kubla Khan's magnificent empire to the poet's personal inner experience. The poet says that he once saw something in a vision, not an ordinary waking reality. The word vision suggests a dreamlike, imaginative, and inspired state of mind, possibly brought by a deep meditation or a trance. Significance of this line is the word once implied that experience was temporary and cannot be easily repeated. The hint is at last moment of inspiration, which the poet remembers but once fully recover. And we can see after this line, Coleridge introduced Abyssinian maid with the dulcimer, who becomes a symbol of a pure poetic inspiration. This line therefore acts a gateway from outer world of Kubla Khan to the inner world of the poetic imagination. And we can see the importance to emphasize this line. It represents the romantic belief in imagination and vision as a source of poetry, and it suggests that the poetry arises from sudden and mysterious inspiration, not a deliberate effort. Reinforces the poem's dreamlike and fragmentary nature. Literary device used in this line is romantic imagery such as vision and dream, and symbolism is also one of the literary devices used in this line, such as vision symbolizes creative inspiration. A tone is reflective and nostalgic. The line highlights Coleridge's idea that the true poetic creation depends on rare visionary moments, which the poet longs to regain in order to create in perfect art. And one more image is used in this line is dream imagery. Line number 39. It was an Abyssinian maid. Line identifies the visionary figure seen by the poet as an Abyssinian Ethiopian maid, adding an element of exotic beauty and mystery to the poem. Abyssinian referring to Abyssinian modern day Ethiopian for romantic poet. It suggests something distant, exotic, and unfamiliar one. The maid implies innocence, purity, and grace. By calling her as Abyssinian maid, Coleridge places this figure in a far away, almost mythical land and far removed from ordinary European reality. This reinforces the dreamlike and imaginative nature of the vision. She is not a real woman but a symbolic figure of poetic inspiration. The Abyssinian maid plays the dulcimer and sings of Mount Obra. Her song represents the lost music of the inspiration, which, if the poet could hear again, this would enable him to recreate the pleasure dome in the air, that is, compose perfect poetry. Hence, this line highlights romantic exotism. She is from Abyssinian, Ethiopian, adding exotic beauty to the line. Literary device used in this line is exotic imagery. Line number 40. And on her dulcimer she played. The line continues the poet's visionary description of the Abyssinian maid and emphasizes the musical source of poetic inspiration. Dulcimer is a string musical instrument that produces soft, sweet, and harmonious sound. She played refers to suggest active creation, rhythm, and flow. The line presents the image of maid producing enchanting music, not merely existing as visual figure but an living source of sound and movement. Symbolic significances: the dulcimer music symbolizes melody, rhythm, and harmony of poetry. Music here stands for creative inspiration, which comes naturally and effortlessly, unlike deliberate reasoning. Her playing represents a spontaneous imaginative process through which the great poetry is born. The author Coleridge implies that it is if he can rehear this music, he would regain the power to build that the doom in the air. to create poetry of a magical beauty. Thus, this line highlights the central importance of inspiration in poetic creation, reinforces the romantic belief is music as the highest art. It shows that poetry has something heard and felt, not merely constructed. It contributes to a dream-like visionary atmosphere of the poem. Literary device used in this line is auditory imagery appeals to the sense of hearing, and one more device is symbolism, which dulcimer represents the poetic imagination, and which is romantic imagery, emphasis on emotion and music. Hence, the line we can tell that she was playing a sweet music on a dulcimer. It stresses that true poetry arises from inspired harmony represented by music rather than the conscious effort or a logical planning. Hence, she plays music so sweetly. Line number 41, singing of Mount Opera. She sings of sacred and mythical mountain. Literary device used in this line is mythical allusion. Then symbolism is also represents Mount Opera as an ideal imaginative realm. An auditory image is used in this line, such as singing appeals to the sound, and imagery is dramatic imagery focused on vision and music. Hence, we can see she was singing about an ideal mysterious Mount Opera. It suggests that the poetry is born from inspired song, and loss of such an inspiration prevents the poet from fully realizing his creative vision. Hence, this line completes the poetic vision of the Abyssinian maid and deepens the poem theme of imagination and poetic inspiration. Singing here suggests music, harmony, and inspired expression. Mount Opera, it represents a mythical or imagery mountain, associates with paradise-like beauty and spiritual elevation. Mount Opera does not refer to the real, but it clearly identifiable place. It is while vagueness adds to a dreamlike and vision quality of the poem. The Abyssinian maid sings the song of Mount Opera while playing her dulcimer. Her song evokes an ideal heavenly world far removed from ordinary human experience. The mountain symbolizes the realm of perfect beauty. This line completes the poet's vision of Abyssinian maid and deepens the poem's theme of imagination and poetic inspiration. Singing this phrase represents music, harmony, and inspired expression. Mount Opera, it is a mythical or imaginary mountain associated with paradise-like beauty and spiritual elevation. Mount Opera does not refer to the real but clearly identifiable place. It vagueness adds a dream-like and vision-like quality to of the poem. Abyssinian maid sings of Mount Opera while playing her dulcimer. Her song evokes an ideal heavenly world far removed from ordinary human experience. This mountain symbolizes a realm of perfect beauty and harmony, which the poet longs to recreate through the poetry. To identify the symbolism in this line, Mount Opera symbolizes the height of imaginative and spiritual achievement. The maid song represents the pure music of inspiration, which is recovered through allows the poet to create poetry of divine power. The line reinforces the idea of the great poetry originates in vision and songs, not of the in reason. It emphasizes poetic exotism and mysticism. It highlights the connection between music, imaginary, and creativity of a poet, and it supports the poem's dreamlike fragmentary structure. Line number 42, could I revive within me? This line expresses the poetic deep longing to regain lost inspiration and marks an important emotion turning point in the poem. Could I, it shows a wish and or unreal condition suggesting doubt and longing. Revive what represents to bring back to life or restore. Within me it represents the poet's own mind and imagination. Together the phrase means If only I can bring back that lost imaginative power within myself. To explain in a simple manner, after describing the Absanian maid and a song, the poet says that if he could revive the music and inspiration within himself, he would be able to create a vision as magnificent as Kubla Khan's Pleasure's Tomb. And this line shows that the poet's awareness that true poetry depends on inner inspiration, not external effort. It highlights the romantic belief that inspiration is spontaneous and rare, and it also expresses the transitions of creative vision. It comes and goes. It shows that poet earning for imaginative unity and power. The tone is highly emotional. The tone is beautiful and earning, filled with desire but also uncertainty because the poet is not sure that he cannot ever regain that inspired state. Literary device used in this line is conditional mood expresses longing and possibility, and romantic subjectivity is one of the focuses on inner experience of the poet, and it also symbolizes several return from poetic power. Hence, this line reveals Coleridge's view that poetry is born from inner vision and without revived in inspiration from the external one. The poet wished that he could regain that inspiration. Line number 44, to such a deep delight it would win me. Coleridge suggests that if he could revive within himself the music of Absanian maid, that it would transport him to the deep and joyful trance. It states that delight he would possess the creative power to build the pleasure of doom in the air, that is, to compose perfect poetry. Deep delight refers to not an ordinary pleasure but to the creative ecstasy, a heightened state of consciousness. It reflects the romantic idea that the true poetic creation involves emotional intensity and imaginative rapture. The phrase suggests that near mystical experience where the poet transcends normal reality. The tone is ecstatic yet earning, since joy is described but not fully achieved. Literary device used in this line is hyperbole, exaggeration of delight to express intensity of his joy, and romantic imagery is also one of that focus on emotional and imaginative elevation of the poet mind. Then we can see the mood is conditional mood. It shows longing rather than certainty. Line number 45, that with music loud and long, music symbolizes poetry and imagination and creative inspiration. Loud is powerful and forceful and overwhelming in effect. Long it is continuous and sustained and not momentary. Together, phrase suggests a strong and lasting inspiration, not a brief and faint impulse. Coleridge images that he could revive the Absanian maid song within himself, that it would come to him as a powerful and continuous music. Such an inspiration would enable him to enter the state of creativity, ecstasy, and produce poetry of an extraordinary beauty. And the music, loud and long, represents a full and unbroken imaginative power. It is contrast with the poet's present condition, where inspiration are fragmentary and incomplete. This line reinforces the poetic ideal that poetry is closely allied with music. Literary device used as auditory imagery. The tone of this line is hopeful yet earning, expressing desire for sustained creative energy. Literary device used in this line is alliteration, repeated of sound like uh, loud and long. Low sound is repeated, so we can see alliteration is found in this line. Next device is symbolism. The music as a poetic inspiration as a symbolism. An auditory imagery is used in this line as it could be interpreted as a sense of hearing. This line emphasizes that true poetic creation requires strong and lasting inspiration, which the poet longs to regain. Line number 46, I would build the dome in air. I would indicates wishes or conditional desire, not certainty. And that dome, it refers to Kubla Khan's pleasure dome, symbolizes a perfect beauty and harmony. In air, it is an imagination, not a physical reality. Together, line means the poet would recreate the magnificent pleasure dome purely through imagination and poetry. Hence, the poet Coleridge suggests that if he could regain the music inspiration symbolized by the Obsidian maid, he would have the power to recreate the pleasure dome through the words alone. Building the dome in the air, it emphasizing that poetry is immaterial art created by in the realm of imagination. The line symbolizes poetic recreation itself. Literary device used in this line is a metaphor, the poetry of as represent as creation. Hence, this line shows the romantic belief that imagination can suppress physical reality. The doom becomes a metaphor for a perfect poem, complete and harmonious. The tone is aspirational and visionary, mixed with longing, because this creative power is conditioned and uncertain. The literary device used in this line is metaphor. Building the dome represents composing poetry, and symbolism is doom, which represents ideal beauty and artistic perfection. Romantic idealism is also, it represents a faith in imagination as a creative force. Line number 47, that sunny dome, those caves of ice. This line is a powerful exclamation that sums up the poet's imaginative vision and highlights the poem's central idea of harmonious opposites. That sunny dome, sunny suggests light and warmth and joy and creative energy. Doom refers to the pleasure of dome of Kubla Khan, symbolizing art, beauty, and human creativity. Those caves of ice, the caves suggest darkness, depth, and mystery and unknown. Ice represent coldness, rigidity, and stillness, forces opposite to warmth and sunshine. The poet imagines that if he could revive true inspiration, he would be able to recreate poetry, the astonishing vision of pleasure dome where sunlight and ice exist together. Exclamatory tone shows that is excitement, awe, and creative ecstasy. This line emphasizing the romantic imagination which can untie contradictions, heat, cold, light and darkness, pleasure and mystery. It shows that such a structure of impossible in reality but possible in poetic imagination. The dome and caves together symbolizes the balance between conscious art and unconscious natural forces. Literary devices, repetition and exclamation is used in this line. The tone of this line is rapturous and triumphant, revealing the poet's intense excitement as through the complete imaginative power. Literary device used in this line is exclamation, conveys emotional intensity of the poet, and paradox and contrast is also another literary device used in this line, such as sunny versus ice is in contrast term, and imagery is visual imagery contrast, and it also symbolizes doom. It represents the creative art, and cave of ice represents the mysterious nature. Line number 48, and all who heard should see them there. This line explains extraordinary effect of the poet's inspired song on others, and who heard, anyone who listened to the poet's inspired utterance or a song should see this phrase. It would be able to perceive or visualize them there. This phrases, it suggests the sunny dome or a cave of ice, the poet imagination creations. Together, the line means anyone who heard the poet's inspired poetry would be able to vividly see the imagination vision that he creates. Yet, the poet Coleridge suggests that if he could regain the full inspiration, his poetry would be powerful, that listeners would experience visual images merely by hearing it. Sound, such as music or poetry, would turn into a sight as vision. This shows the magical power of true poetry. It also demonstrates the romantic idea of synthesia, where one sense leads to another, such as hearing creates seeing. And it also shows the poetry as creates forces that shapes reality in the listener's mind. It also emphasizes the poet's role as an visionary or a prophet. Literary device used in this line is synthesia, which means hearing leads to seeing. The tone of the line is confident and visionary, suggesting mastery over imagination and audience. And literary device used in this line is synthesia, hearing leads to seeing, and a hyperbole is also one of the literary devices used in this line. Exaggeration, poetry's power, and that symbolism is also one of the literary devices used in this line, such as seeing represents imaginative understanding. Yet, this line highlights Coleridge's belief that inspired poetry has a power to create living vision in the internal world than the external one. Line number 49, and all should cry, beware, beware. In this line, the poet says that everyone who sees and hears about the poet's inspired state should be warning, beware, beware. This warning expresses fear and awe reverence, not an ordinary danger. It suggests that the poet, filled with intense imaginative and creative power, appears almost supernatural. The repeated words beware emphasize the sense of alarm and sacred dread, as if the poet has entered the realm beyond the normal human experience. Let us see the literary significance of this line shows that society reaction to inspired poet mixed fear and admiration. It reflects the romantic ideas that true poetic genius is dangerous, powerful, and godlike. The line contributes the poet mystical and visionary atmosphere. Literary device found in this line is repetition, such as we can find in the word beware, beware. Burr sound is repeated. A repetition is found in this line, which intensifies the warning. And exclamation is also adds an urgency and emotional force. The tone is awe-filled, ominous, and reverential. Symbolic meaning the warning suggests that the poet, touched by divine inspiration, is apart from ordinary humanity and it should be approached with holy fear. Line number 50 is flashing eyes is floating air. This line, the author Coleridge describes inspired poet who has been filled up with divine or a supernatural creative power. The flashing eyes suggest intense excitement, visionary insight, and spiritual energy. The floating air gives impression of somebody caught up with trance and ecstasy, and it lifted beyond the physical world. Together, these images shows the poet as a mythical, almost godlike figure whose appearances inspires awe, fear, and reverence in others. Literary significance this line presents the poet as a poetic, romantic genius. Possessed by imagination, it reflects the idea of the true creativity is a power and dangerous one. The description recalls an ancient prophets or musicians, reinforcing poem's supernatural tone. Literary device used in the line is imagery, strong visual imagery is used in this line, and which is alliteration is also applicable in this line, such as flashing, floating. First sound is repeated in this both phrases, so adds a musical effect. Then exclamation mark conveys excitement, intensity. Then symbolic meaning, flashing eyes, it represents visionary power and inspired imagination of the poet. And floating hair, it represents the symbol trances like state and spiritual position. The line means that inspired poet looks wild and supernatural, showing the intense power of the poetic imagine of his own. Line number 51, weave a circle around him thrice. In this line, the poet suggests that the poet should form a protective circle around the inspired poet, going around him three times. The act of weaving a circle is a ritualistic and a magical gesture meant either to protect others from the poet's overwhelming power or to protect poet himself. The number thrice, three times, has symbolic significance often associated with magic, holiness, and completeness in Asian traditions. This suggests that poet has entered a sacred and supernatural state. Literary significance of this line, it emphasizes its awe and sacred fear inspired by the poet. It presents poetry and imagination as powerful and almost magical forces. It reinforces the romantic idea of that poet as a visionary figure set apart from ordinary people. Literary device found in this line is symbolism, such as circle symbolizes protection and sacred boundary. Thrice it symbolizes magic, holiness, and completeness. Imperative mood gives a command like a ritual tone, and the line means that the people should ritually surround the inspired poet 3 times to mark him as a sacred and dangerous. Line number 52, and close your eyes with holy dread. This line, the poet advises people to shut their eyes in the reverent fear. When in the presence of the inspired poet, the phrase holy dread suggests a feeling that both fear and reverence, a kind of awe, one feels before something sacred or divine. The line implies that the poet's imagination power is so extraordinary and supernatural that ordinary people cannot look upon it directly. Closing the eyes became a sign of respect and humility before a higher and almost divine force. Literary significance of this line, it emphasized the sacred nature of the poetic inspiration. It presents the poets as a visionary figure similar to the prophet or a holy man. It also reflects the romantic belief that imagination connects humans with the divine. Literary device found in this line is oxymoron like phrase. Holy dread combines fear and reverence. Imperative mood close gives commanding to ritual one, and the imagery is also one of the devices used which suggests a solemn and sacred atmosphere. The line means that the poet should shut their eyes in reverent fear before the poet divine inspiration. Line number 53, for he on honeydew hath fed. This line, the poet Coleridge explains why the poet is so powerful and awe-inspiring. The phrase honeydew symbolizes divine magical nourishment rather than ordinary human food. It suggests that the poet has been fed by nature or heaven itself, receiving spiritual and imaginative sustenance. This nourishment gives the poet extraordinary creative power, lifting him above normal human being. His inspiration comes from supernatural sources, not from everyday experience. Literary significance of this line, it presents the poetic inspiration as an divinely granted. It supports the idea that the poet lives on the higher spiritual sustenance. It reinforces the mystical and visionary tone of the poem. Literary device used in this line is symbolism, has honeydew represents divine inspiration and spiritual nourishment, and metaphor is also another device used in this line, such as feeding on honeydew represents living on imagination and inspiration. The line means that the poet has been nourished by divine inspiration rather than ordinary human food. Line number 54, and drank the milk of paradise. This line Coleridge completes the idea of the poet divine nourishment. The milk of paradise symbolizes pure heavenly sustenance that comes from spiritual and divine realm. By drinking this milk, the poet receives perfect inspiration and creative power. Milk is traditionally associated with nourishment, purity, and life, while paradise represents heaven. Together, the phrase suggests that the poet's imagination is nurtured directly by the divine, making him more than an ordinary human being. Literary significance, the line reinforces the idea that true poetic inspiration is divine. It elevates a poet as semi-divine or a prophetic status. It concludes the poem with the sense of mystical completion and awe. Literary device used in this line is symbolism. The milk represents purity and nourishment. Paradise represents heaven and divine realm. Another literary device used in this line is metaphor. Drinking milk of paradise represents receiving divine inspiration. The line means that the poet has been nourished by pure and heavenly inspiration. Let us see the literary device used in this poem, Kubla Khan. First is imagery. The poem is rich in sensory imagery such as visual, auditory, and kinetic. Visual imagery is stately pleasure doom, and we can see in the phrases such as caves of ice, and auditory imagery such as woman wailing, and in the phrases murmuring sound, and kinetic energy such as we can see ceaseless turmoil, seething, and dancing rock. These are some of the imageries of visually, auditory, and kinetic imageries used in this poem, and it creates a vivid, dreamlike world. Next is symbolism. The pleasure dome, the human art, imagination, imperial power of the palace, and the sacred river is also one of the symbolism. It creates an energy or an imagination. Then charms, it is represents unconscious mind and chaos and primary forces. And the caves of ice, it represents mystery and contradiction of creation. Obsidian made it symbolizes the pure artistic inspiration. And the next literary device is personification. Nature is given human quality. We can see this personification is applicable as in the phrases, as if this earth is fast, thick pants were breathing. It is vitally and emotionally intensity, as earth is breathing so heavily like of a human mankind. So personification, it gives a real great effect to this line of the poem. The next is alliteration, repetition of a constant sound, such as example we can see in these phrases 5 miles mending with an mazy motion. So look at this lines, that is mer sound and miles, and mending mer sound, and with mazy mer sound and motion mer sound. So mer is completely repeated in this line. So alliteration could be found in this line, which enhances the musical quality of the poem. Next is metaphor, life and creativity compared to natural process, the such as fountain symbolizes creative forces. It is a metaphor. The imagination is shown as powerful natural energy. The next literary device is simile. Of course, we can find out in this phrases such as explicit comparison, life rebounding hail, and as holy as enchanted, makes an abstract ideas in concrete. Next is repetition. Repetition traces could be found in that sunny dome, that caves of ice, the two contrast time of the sunny dome as well as icy caves, and it is in paradox. It emphasizes wonder and obsession. And next is hyperbole. Exaggerating thought is hyperbole. Of course, we can see such an example of caravans measureless to man. Here the caves is measureless, and it is we cannot measure the beauty. I mean, to man, so it creates a sense of infinity and awe. So it is in hyperbole. The next literary device is contrast, such as order versus chaos. Pleasure represents doom, and savage represents charms. And civilization verse, while nature is some of the contrast literary device found in this poem. Next literary device is musical device, such as rhythm. The rhyme creates an hypnotic effect, and the flowing meter imitates river movement. Let us find the different theme of the poem Kubla Khan. The first theme is power of imagination, central theme of the poem. The poet rises from vision, dream, and inspiration. The poet can also build a dome in air through imagination. So this is the power of imagination is the central theme of the poem. Next theme is nature versus human control. Nature is shown as both beautiful and creative, violent and uncontrollable. Human power is limited compared to nature. Next theme is creation and art. The poem explores how poetry is created. Artistic creation is mystical and divine. The poet becomes prophet-like figure. Next theme is order and chaos. The pleasure dome represents order. The charms represents chaos. Truly, creativity comes from union of both. Next theme is supernatural and mystery. Haunted place and prophetic voices. Holy dread reflects romantic fantasization with an unknown. Next theme is exorcism and Orientalism. Use of Eastern settings such as Zandu and Abyssinia, it creates a distance from Western reality. Next theme is transcendence of human power. Such as Kubla Khan empire appears magnificent, but it seems fragile. Nature and time outstands human achievement. This is also one of the major theme of this poem. Next theme is visionary experience. The poem reflects a dream or a trance state. It shows the poet's inner world of the poet's state of his life. Thank you so much for patient listening to this e-content.